Clarissa is a new mom. She's involved in youth and young adult ministry at Queen of Apostles Catholic Church in San Jose, California. His hubby, Jonathan, serves in his parish choir and a worship leader for retreats. Please join me in welcoming Clarissa and Jonathan Chichoko.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
As Sister Marisa said, my name is Jonathan, and this is my wife, Clarissa. And we live in Santa Clara, California. But originally, I'm from New Jersey, from the East Coast, so I'm used to this cold weather, probably even colder. And you're from?
And I was born in Canada, but grew up in Modesto, so the Central Valley, before moving here to San Jose.
Yes, and so we've been married for 5 years now, and we have a little one that you probably saw while we were singing. Her name's Kara. She's 2 years old, and we have a baby coming in January, a boy. So our family is growing, and yeah, we're very excited to be living out this call to be husband and wife, but also to be father and mother to our children. But even before that, we've been part of the ministry since the year 2000. And so I joined in New Jersey in January of 2000. So it's going to be 21 years, I think, since my anniversary coming in January. And you joined in?
I also joined in the year 2000 under the youth ministry of this ministry, and I think it was August of 2000. So
we were both in the youth, opposite ends of the country, of course, but we were both going through the same retreats and hearing a lot of the same talks. We both attended the campus-based ministry as well, and so we were attending assemblies and meetings during our college years, and then going to events for the singles ministry, and now here we are with all of you, and I think, looking back on that time and relating it to what we're going to be speaking about today, I don't think we would be who we are today and be doing what we do had it not been for all that we've experienced, but not just what we've experienced, but responding to those experiences. It's one thing to hear a talk or to go to an event, but it's another thing to actually respond and to actually be proactive about it. And so that's what we're going to be speaking about today, is how can we be a living witness to this person we know as Jesus Christ, who offers us his love, his salvation, the truth, and the way. How can we respond to him, and how can we live that out in our own lives? So we're going to share our screen, and we'll have some slides to kind of follow along a little bit. It may not be word for word what we're saying, but just some kind of main points to as to kind of supplement what we'll be talking about today.
Okay, so like Jonathan said, we'll be talking about witnessing to this person, Jesus Christ, witnessing him in our lives. And we had a lot of experiences growing up, a lot of God encounters, we can say, moments of meeting God and meeting Christ. And we've been baptized, we received our sacraments, but of course there are many Catholic Christians who've been baptized and may not be responding to the faith right now. Perhaps something is more of a priority, or perhaps then they've left the church, or are just not present with God or in their prayer lives. And there are also another group of us who are just kind of going through the motions of our faith. Perhaps we go to Mass on Sundays, or we're tuning in virtually, but our hearts aren't really there. We're just kind of checking off, a box in our faith, and not really putting our whole selves into it. We're just kind of saying hi to God or a high five to God once a week, and then the rest of the days we're going about our own lives. But what is being an authentic Christian? And we're going to unpack this. But to be an authentic Christian, it's to meet and encounter Jesus and to know Him. It's to live as He did, and it's to share Him with other people. So first, we need to meet Him and to know Him. I know for myself, growing up, Jesus was more like a historical figure that I heard about from my parents, whether it was hearing a gospel passage or seeing a statue of Him during Sunday Mass. But I didn't really have a personal relationship with Him until I went on my first retreat when I was 12 years old. And that was really the first time where I opened up my heart to Him, and I invited Him into my life, and just had, I remember it was, I think, Saturday morning. We just had 15 minutes. They said, just talk to Jesus, just pray, just communicate, and build a friendship, a relationship with Him. And so I just remember at that moment, Jesus was transitioned from a historical figure, a distant figure, to a actual friend of mine, a friend, a teacher of the faith, and my personal savior. And I'll never forget that moment where I actually could call Him someone that I loved and who loved me.
And so often, just like how when in our relationships today, you meet someone, you get to know them, and then it's not like that's the end of it, or hopefully that's not the end of it. There is this response there. There's an action, call to action there, and which is maybe to kind of learn from them and speak to them more, and and so for Jesus, when we meet Him, we also are called to live as He does. And so what does that mean? That means to respond to the call of holiness and discipleship. So let's unpack that a little bit. So the call to holiness. So what does holy mean? What does holiness look like, right? So the word holy, it literally means to be set apart. And so if you think about the world that we live in, there's, of course, there are people and things that we can see that are like, oh, there is virtue and there is holiness emanating from that person or what they're doing. But then there are other things in this world that are quite the opposite. And so what it means to be holy, it means to be in this world, but not to be of this world. And so we shouldn't allow ourselves to be consumed by consuming the things that are not holy, or the things that keep us away from God. And so that is the challenge of being holy, is to be set apart. And one of the things I think that for a lot of people, as they're starting to understand their faith more and more and trying to get more involved, one of the things maybe they struggle with is this idea that you have to be perfect, and you have to be flawless and sinless. And in Matthew, it says, be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. And just last night, while we were doing our final preparations for this talk, I was thinking about, that word perfect. I'm like, well, how can we describe what perfect means, especially if perfection is impossible. I'm far from it, and Clarissa's close, but I would think she would say she's not there yet either. But well, first and foremost is that holiness is something that we don't achieve in a day. It's not something that we achieve in a week or even a year. It's something that we strive for an entire lifetime. And so, so I guess as you are exploring your journey with Christ, recognize that it's a decision that we make every single day. It's a decision that I have to make every day. It's a decision that our family has to make every single day. When I talk to priests in confession, it's they themselves have to make that daily decision to live as Christ does. And so that idea of perfection, what it really means is to be whole, to be complete. And so it's when we're being called to be holy, we should be whole. We should not be compartmentalizing our faith into different parts of our lives and keeping him out of the other. Like I'm only going to meet and live out Christ on Sundays and Saturdays, and then the rest of the week I'm not going to. Right? That would not be the ideal for being holy, to be complete. It's everything about who you are and what you do, and surrounding that and centering it around Christ. And so it's very hard, obviously, right? It's a very hard and difficult thing that Christ asks of us. But Christ recognizes that. That's why he was human. He became human to relate to us, but still he challenges us each and every single day to deny ourselves. In Luke, it says, if you want to be my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. And so the idea of taking up your cross, it means, recognizing the hardships in your life and recognizing your weaknesses, recognizing your inadequacies and your incompleteness, and offering that to God and saying, God, I am far from holy and I'm far from perfect, but I want to live like you. And that humility and that desire, God recognizes and blesses. And so as long as our desire is there to live as Christ does, he will bless that. And that brings us closer to holiness each and every single day. And so I think that's just another thing, is just making a decision to live Christ each day.
So in addition to meeting Christ, knowing Christ, and living as Christ does, Christians are also called to share Christ with other people, to be a witness. We can think of a witness on a stand that we, in court or in a movie. Their role is to share an account of their experiences of a person, or their relationship with a person. And so as a Christian witness, we share about Christ and who he is. We proclaim the gospel, which is the good news that Jesus came to join our humanity so that we could join in his divinity. And we do this every day in our normal day-to-day lives. And we have this great opportunity to share, especially right now because of our the digital age. We can share about Christ and how he's moved our hearts through the internet, through communicating on the phone, through Zoom, FaceTime, and just with people that we encounter every day. And just an example of someone who I think is very gifted with not being afraid or fearful of what people will think, is my mom, and she's part of this ministry as well. And she will tell like the mailman about Jesus if she were to see him or just any stranger. And I remember what uh, accompanying her to get a haircut, and she was telling the person cutting her hair about this ministry, and that person ended up joining the ministry and being and is now today a very active participant. And so that's just what can happen when we share about Christ to other people in our lives. And that's probably why all of us are here today. Someone shared with us about Christ or had shown actions that imitate Christ, and it was attractive to us. And we wanted to know more about why that person was the way that they are. And so that's why a lot of us came here in this ministry and in our Catholic faith. And I think it's good for us to just reflect on like what do we love? What are those things that we so readily want to share with other people? When we sit down with another family or a friend and we sit down for coffee, what's the first thing we want to tell them? A lot of the times it's the new movie that we saw or the new restaurant that we tried. But on top of that, we should be excited about sharing about Christ. And of course, that's not always easy. It depends on who we're talking to. But in some way, whether we use words or not, we are called to witness Christ and his actions to other people, and that's love. So the greatest commandments are to love God and our neighbors. These are, again, the greatest ways, the greatest form of witnessing Christ to other people. And it says in Mark that one of the scribes came near and heard them disputing with one another, and seeing that he answered them well, he asked him, "Which commandment is the first of all?" Jesus answered, "The first is, 'Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. And the second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these, to love God and to love our neighbor." And I think before we'll go into what that looks like, loving God with our whole selves. But first, I think it's important to address what love is. And love is the Trinity. Love is God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Exchanging between those three persons in this one God is love. It's this unconditional, abundant, creative love that they have for one another. And when something is so abundant and so amazing and the amount is great, it pours out. And that's what love is supposed to look like. Love pours out as a gift of ourselves to other people. And we can read in Corinthians this very popular verse about love. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but it rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And so all of this describes God as well, because God is love. So God is patient, he is kind, he's not envious, he rejoices in truth. And so we can look at these characteristics of love as a model for us in how to be loving towards other people. And I think it's important to know as well that love is not self-seeking and using other people or even using God as a genie or using being the title of being a Christian to just show that, we're a good person or a righteous person. Love is not taking from other people and grasping things that for our own benefit. But again, love is a gift that we give from ourselves, from our own hearts, and pour out to others.
So, as Clarissa has described what love looks like, we put that into action by, of course, loving our neighbor, but first and foremost, loving God. And so, how do we love God? And first is we love God with all of our heart. And so, in order to love God with all of our heart, that means putting God first in our lives. And that I think alone is very difficult, or can be very challenging. We all have busy lives, and we all have the things that we maybe goals that we have or things that we need to do, and so sometimes it can be difficult putting God first. But I think when I think about what it means to love someone by putting them first, I think about my daughter. Obviously, during the work week, it's difficult, or it can be challenging to be focused, especially in this age right now that we're living in, where working from home is kind of the normalcy now. So it can be difficult, hearing her playing, and you know you know trying to cry for my attention or anything like that while I'm doing something. But if I hear her fall, or if I hear her getting hurt or something like that, obviously I will drop everything and attend to whatever it is that she needs. Um, and and I think that's just something that's just instinctual in all of us, especially those of us that are parents, is that for those that we love, we'll gladly lay those things down, whatever it is that we're doing, in order to serve the needs of those that we love. And God, the only reason why we're able to do that is because God does that for us each and every single day of our lives. Is He always puts us first. Something I've heard so often is that God loves us each and God, excuse me, God loves each of us individually, as if we were the only ones to love. And there are so many people in this world, on this earth, yet He gives us so much of His attention as if we were the only ones that He could love. And so it's only right for us to respond to that by loving God in the same ways, putting our love for Him first. And the the uh, the I guess the funny thing about doing that is, when you love God first in your life, then He orders everything around your life to fall into place too. And so I can't love my daughter, and I can't love my wife properly if I'm not loving God first. And I think because that exchange of love, it fuels us, it replenishes us, and it energizes us in order to love in such a radical way for those around us, for our neighbor, which we'll get into later. So again, it's making a daily decision to obey Him, to follow Him, and developing that personal relationship with Him. Just like Clarissa had mentioned before about meeting Christ, it's developing a relationship with Him through prayer, through daily prayer, through the sacraments, through meditation, and spending the time and the effort in order to get to know who He is. I remember falling in love with Clarissa. When we were dating. Part of that was just to try to dismantle who she was. Maybe not dismantle is not the right word, but just kind of dissect a little bit more deeply about who she was as a person, as a woman. And so getting to know her more deeply allowed me to love her, wholly, and completely. And so in the same way, maybe not in the same romantic way, but in the same uh, um, radical kind of way, we should love God too, and trying to really understand him and bring that relationship that he's seeking in us, and making that very personal and very close to us, and making that a priority each and every single day.
So, along with loving God with all of our hearts, we are also to love God with our whole mind as well. And of course, we can use our minds to either glorify God, to learn about God, to grow in relationship with God intellectually and in our hearts. But on the other side, we can use our minds for destruction and for sin and brokenness in the world. And I think also, I want to mention a third thing is sometimes we put our minds on autopilot, and we whether it's YouTube or reading the news or watching TV, we're just like click next channel or click next article or next video, and we allow other things to think for us rather than thinking for ourselves and letting God into our imagination and to lead our thoughts. And so we need to be very prudent and cautious for what we put into our minds and what we consume. Very similar to watching what we eat and being healthy, to strengthen our physical bodies, and to be the best version of ourselves. We also should be cautious of what we are allowing into our minds, whether it's what we read, what we watch again on TV, what we look at on the internet. And this again can be very difficult because you know, when I wake up in the morning, sometimes the first thing I don't think about is God. Maybe the first thing I think about is like who emailed me or who is liking one of my posts. And same thing when I go to bed. I don't always reflect on what I'm grateful for and what I experienced that day, how I encountered God. But more so, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow? What are my chores? What does my daughter and my husband need? But we need to preoccupy our minds with God and with his love for us so that he can form our minds, and that he can use us as his vessels to do things like give this talk, or to when I'm talking to a friend about Jesus. I know one thing that I kind of added on to before having this baby, I thought I should continue to form myself in the faith. And I have so many books, but I haven't read a lot of them. But I thought, okay, I'm going to read a book this time before I have this baby. And I'm going to join a study group. And I started doing that on Thursday mornings with a group of people, just to form my faith, because it's so easy just to turn to TV and just to allow these other things to preoccupy my mind. But if I am to love God with all of my mind, then I will invite him into my mind, into the things that I think about, and into the things that I read about. And in that way, I respond to God with my mind and my intellect.
So next, so we talked about loving God with all of our heart. We talked about loving God with all of our mind, and now we talk about loving God with all of our strength. So what does that mean? That means that everything that we have, all of our possessions, all of our time, all of our money, all of our energy, all of our gifts, all of that we give back to God. Everything that we have, we offer it up for him, for him to use as he desires. Just thinking about where we live, like we live in the Silicon Valley, and it's very like everything that you have, you have to work for it, and you earn it, and that's yours, right? Not that, the Silicon Valley can't be philanthropic or anything like that, but it's just very that mentality of like you work hard for it and you earn it, and so you deserve it. Um, but I think something that you know we also should remember is that you know God God orders things around our lives, and he does bless us with so many things. And for me, like I love playing music, and that's just a gift that God has given me, and I'm thankful for it. And it's only right that with these gifts and these possessions that we have, we offer it up to God, and we allow him to use it for his mission, for his plans, and whatever that may be. So earlier, I think during the introduction, it was mentioned that I play in our choir, maybe not so much today, but before, was using my musical talents for musical choir, for mass, was something that gave me a lot of joy, because I knew that God was unlocking the full potential of what I can do musically, and allowing me to use it to bless him and to bless those around me. um, and same with our money. It's difficult talking about money, and and our faith, and what it is that we should be giving. But just remember that Christ calls us uh to remember the least of our brothers and sisters, and not that they are lower than us or less important, but what it means is remembering those whose needs exceed our own. And so there's a lot of homeless that we see in our cities, and maybe even family members that are that we know are struggling. And so it's always important in loving God is to offer up our finances, and the ways that can help the world and our neighbors around us, which we'll get to in a second. But it's just being willing to be very open and very generous with the things that we have. Because one of the things that another thing that I learned that's really important is that God can never be outdone in generosity. So no matter what you give to God, he will always give back to you, even more so. Maybe not physically. It's not like that means if you give $10, you're going to receive $100 the following week. It doesn't work like that. But it just means that God will continue to be generous to you and give his love to you, and manifest itself to you in so many ways the more that you give. Because when you give with a cheerful heart, it gives you grace, and it gives you that sense of purpose to love God and to love your neighbor. And so God challenges us to love in that way with all of our strength, meaning all of the things that we possess.
And then we are to love God with all of our soul. And it's important to know that we have a soul that is united with our bodies. Growing up, I thought, okay, my soul's over here, and I nourish this part of myself on retreats and on Sundays at Mass and the Eucharist, and then I have my body and what my body wants to do. But we are to love God with our body and our soul together, because that's how we were created. From the very beginning, we were created with God's breath, and with the clay, the dust, the dirt of the earth. So we are material beings, but we animate what is invisible, and that is our soul. And so how do we love God with our souls? That's by prayer. That's with going to Mass and receiving the sacraments. That can be even talking to a priest and having spiritual direction, being guided by a priest, having those sessions with him. And then just even physically, we can offer up our soul when I am with my daughter and I am using my energy. I'm also connecting with her, heart to heart. And I know also with like even exercising, there are like these Catholic exercises where you can do like a rosary while you're also doing like push-ups or your squats or you're taking your walk, just to really orient our souls towards God in everything that we do, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically. And we need that. We need to love God with our souls as we do with our families, right? We don't just go through the motions, and we don't just like eat and then leave each other. Like, we try to have conversations with one another. We try to pray with one another and really connect deeply in that way. And so in the same way, that's how we should love God, is to connect deeply with him, in that, deepest part of ourselves. And so the second part of the greatest commandment is to love our neighbors. So we love God with all of our heart, with all of our mind, our strength, and our soul, and also to love our neighbors. What we can ask, who are our neighbors? Actually, here I want to bring up the Good Samaritan parable. When someone asked Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" And the response and the answer is right here in this story. Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, 'Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back.' Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among robbers?" He said, "The one who showed him mercy." And Jesus said to him, "You go and do likewise." And again, this is from Luke chapter 10. And so our neighbors are the people who need help, the ones who are broken, those who are weak, those who have no one to care for them. But in addition, our neighbors are like the people right next to us and our families. My closest neighbor right now is in my womb, in my belly. But also our neighbors are the people that we don't get along with, the people that we're not united with, or that we would consider an enemy or a frenemy, someone who's a friend, but behind our backs is not really a friend to us. These are all the people that we are called to love. And it's not always easy. Again, it takes a lot of energy. I know for my mom right now, the neighbor she's caring for the most is her mother, my grandma, my Lola, who is 97 and very weak. And my mom is doing her best to take care of her and make her comfortable, these days, as she's, not doing too well. But I remember peeking into the room where my mom and Lola were, and my mom was just like feeding her, spoon feeding her, and she'll change her, she'll talk to her, and she'll care for her in the middle of the night. And that's what loving someone looks like, and loving someone who's closest to you, right next to you, under your own roof.
And that love that Clarissa is speaking about, there is a word for that, and that's agape. Agape love, it means sacrificial. It means having a pure, willful, and sacrificial love for another. So like Clarissa had mentioned about talking her about her mother, it's going out of your way, out of your comforts and your own personal interests, and serving the greater needs of another person. Jesus loved us that way. He says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." And he goes on to say in John that no one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And so Jesus was the ultimate example of that. He literally laid down his life for us. He died on a cross and suffered an incredible amount of pain and suffering, so that we may someday live as heirs to his kingdom. And what does that look like for us? Do we die on a cross for our neighbor? That's not what Christ is asking of us, obviously. But again, Christ the teacher, he continues to teach us. um you know uh before he died on during the Last Supper, we remember the story of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples, right? Says, just so if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you should do as I have done to you. To love one another, just as I have loved you, you should love one another. And Christ, who to his disciples were seen as a prophet, as a king, as a teacher, as their master, here he was as this lowly servant, washing their dirty feet that they walked around every single day. And that humility that Jesus showed, during that Last Supper, that is the way that he challenges us to love as well, is to have a humble and open and servant posture in loving our neighbor. Going back to that agape love, it's sacrificing your comfort and sacrificing what you want for the good of another person. you know when we became parents, we learned that very quickly. We were thrown right into agape love with the in the middle of the night wake up calls and the diaper changes and feedings and everything like that. Obviously we wanted to sleep, but of course our daughter had needs. And so we quickly understood what agape love looked like in the context of our family. But again, like what Clarice had mentioned, our neighbor isn't just those in our home. Our neighbor can be the people that maybe we don't particularly enjoy being around. Maybe that coworker that we don't get along with. Now that you're working from home, maybe you don't have to see this person all the time, but you could still love this person by trying to get to know them, and trying to be a resource for them. uh, uh, Maybe a family member that you struggle with, and your relationship is trying to rectify that relationship, trying to have that humility to actually speak up and open yourself up to them. Because pride is what is the complete opposite of what humility is. And so we have to, as Christ said, to lay down ourselves, to lay down our lives, to lay down our pride, and live and love with humility, just as he commanded us, just as he has taught us through his example. So just to kind of wrap things up and to conclude, before we finish here, we just want to just take a moment to say thank you for giving us the time. I know that these virtual meetings are kind of the new normal now, but I know that it can be uncomfortable, and it can be kind of foreign, even still now. But I think, what we want to leave you with is, with everything, that you're hearing today and that you will be hearing in the next few weeks, and just this whole process of hearing these talks, we want to challenge you to lean into that discomfort, to lean into that, and to kind of delve deeper, because when we lean into the discomfort, that's when our old habits can change. That's when our eyes and our hearts are transformed, and because God wants to love you, and God wants to save you, but we have to respond. And so the way that we respond is really leaning into that unknown and that foreignness and that discomfort, and discovering Him again. So thank you so much for your time, and we will be praying for you in this new and exciting journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan and Clarissa, for witnessing to all of us by your life, by 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 living Christ, sharing Christ. I know it's not easy, especially with like a toddler around us and another one along the way, but be assured that you, both of you, will be in our prayers. Thank you for your time, and God bless. The next part of our program is group discussion. We will put you in groups to ask questions and or share your faith about call to witness. We will put you automatically in meeting rooms with your facilitators. And when you're done, we'll put you right back into the main room. Thank you.
Ano ginawa mo? Umalis ka?
Paano gagawin ko doon sa isang walang? Sino ba ang wala? Ako lang naman ang wala. Sino sinasabing
Hindi, si ano siguro. Si Osito.